Welcome to 10-Minute Tips with Clearthought Consulting. In this session, we're going to look at where emotion fits in the sales funnel. This is all about pushing the right buttons. In these sessions, we're using Kotler's model of rational decision making, in which you move from awareness through to loyalty. It's a process that I refer to often as being your buckets, your funnels and your taps in your organisation. More about that in other presentations. So if we think about emotion and logic through the sales funnel, the diagram up at the moment shows you the interplay between each. When someone's emotional, they won't listen to logic. When someone's in a logical frame of mind, emotion won't work. You'll see that through the sales funnel, one will effectively even out the other. So let's walk through and let's show you what I mean. So up at awareness, you need to be hitting those emotional buttons. If someone is actively looking for a product or service, then they're usually trying to resolve an issue. They've usually got a problem and they need you to solve it. It's frustration, it's emotion. If they're not actively looking, then you're going to need to grab their attention. And that's best done emotionally. Think about headlines or ads or virals. You're not going to post a viral video onto someone on Facebook because it's logically interesting. You'll normally pass it on because it's funny or it got a response from you. Think about it this way. If you've just spotted someone who you like the look of and you fancy them, it's an emotional response. You're unlikely to be logicked into spotting someone and thinking they're attractive. So what happens here? Emotion is highly influential. Looking at the next step, so getting someone's interest, at this stage, you need to let people check you out without having to talk to you. Typically, they like the look of you and they just want to check you out. Think here about your website, events, blogs or downloads. They're still feeling reasonably emotional, but they're starting to see whether you live up to that. Think about your website, the fact that they might check you out at a stand on an event, read a blog or download something from your site. Think the attractiveness equivalent. This is when you might Google someone or check them out on Facebook. You're hardly going to go over and start quizzing him on his political views or his earning potential. The influence of emotion here is still pretty high. Next stage is evaluation. So this is where you really need to live up to it, and it's where the rational brain kicks in. So you've seen something that's caught your attention, you've looked a little bit further, it still looks interesting, and now you really want to know whether it lives up to what they say. This is when people check out demos, read case studies, look at data sheets, see if they can afford it. And looking at the attractiveness analogy again, this is when you'll ask friends about someone. So, what's he like and what's important to him. This is exactly what your potential customers are doing. They will check your case studies. They'll see if they know anyone who knows you and see whether you stand up to the claims that you've made. Influence here of emotion is slightly lower. This is definitely when the rational brain kicks in. So we move on to when someone's trialling. So they've checked you out. They've had someone say that you're good. Now this is where they get their hands on your product or service or try it out. Think here of freemium models. So this is where it's free to start with and then you upgrade once you've seen that the product is good. Or that first project, or in technology, maybe a proof of concept. In the attractiveness analogy, this is the first date. This is where you see whether or not they actually live up to the picture that you've built in your mind. In terms of, in the buying cycle, in terms of the influence here, emotion is pretty low. This is whether you genuinely can do what you say you will do. And then we're on to adoption. So this is when someone hands over their money. If you've passed logical inspection, it now needs to feel right. And you need to influence the wider decision makers. What happens here is a kind of switch. They've got a list of logical things that they want to tick off. And if you've ticked all those off and you meet all their criteria, they then kick into an emotional frame of mind. So if they've got two suppliers, both have ticked off all their rational requirements, They then think, but who feels right? Think here about guarantees. So let's imagine that you think both look pretty good. You'll go with the one who might give you a guarantee. That's an emotional response. What if it goes wrong? Whether someone's got a decent handshake or they feel right, you just get a sense of that whole account management of the people you're talking to feeling right. It could even be as far as, who the boss knows. Have they heard of them? The boss may not have done the rational review that you've done. They might just think that company's pretty good and they know someone who plays golf with them. We all know that there are products that have been bought that are inferior, but it felt right. In the attractiveness analogy, this is the second date once you've gone through the detail of the trial with your mates and they agree that it sounds like it's worth seeing them again. So the influence of emotion is really, really high. Think about that tipping point. Once you've ticked up everything logical, they switch back to emotion. And then what happens here at loyalty? This is when people are moving from transaction to relationship. So a transactional relationship is where they just buy multiple times, but they're not referring you or recommending you to other people. It's only when you've got a relationship with someone that they're likely to feel like they're going to refer you or they're a real advocate for what you do. Think here, would they go on record as being your customer? Would they provide you with a testimonial or a case study? Think about hospitality. You take your clients out because you want to give them a sense of who you are as a person. Account management or more regular contact. This is the equivalent of perhaps meeting the parents, when you're happy to go public with the fact that you're with someone or the fact that you use someone's products or services. So the influence here is really high. What other people think, the reputational impact of you saying that you use someone is a real emotional perspective on things. So which is more important out of these two? Without doubt, it's emotion. And the reason I say that is that you are likely to stay potentially with an inferior product because you like the people, you know they'll pick up your calls, than you are to go with a product or service that's better, but perhaps the salespeople are rude or they make you feel stupid. We all know that even if the product is perfect, if it doesn't feel right, you're very unlikely to buy it again. So a quick run through. Right up at the top, emotion is extremely important. Continues through into interest. And now we're evaluating things, the logical brain kicks in. When we're trialling products, we're really checking them out against some really rational criteria. Assuming you've ticked all those rational boxes, the emotion kicks in again. And you're only likely to turn into loyalty if you genuinely emotionally engage with a product or service or brand. So 3 things for you to remember. Personality counts. That's your brand. That's the image that people have got in their head of you. It's when someone says to them, "What's Clearthought like?" And they say, "Yeah, they're really good people. You can trust them to do a good job." That's your personality. It counts. It comes through on Twitter, in your tone of voice, in your visuals. And the next thing to say is you can't logic someone into feeling something. I've lost count of the number of times I've worked with particularly technology providers who are so convinced by the brilliance of their technological solution that they can't understand why throwing data sheets at someone won't make them love it as much as they do. And that's because they're coming at it logically when someone needs to feel something. However, the converse is true. If someone is absolutely in trial and they are checking you out, if you keep coming back with emotional response, it feels like you're avoiding the subject. It feels like you don't have the depth and the credibility. So you need to know where someone is in that buying process. Don't logic them into feeling something, and don't get all emotional with them when they just want to know the facts. I hope that's been helpful. You've been listening to Clearthought. There's much more at our website at www.clear-thought.co.uk. Many thanks.